All right, so in this video, I'm going to be going over the lesson plan for Dumpy the Big Bay Cleanup. So this is a mini lesson plan that's included in the book, okay? So the grade level, so this is going to be for kindergarten to third grade. The time allotment for this is going to be 30 to 45 minutes. Your objectives is students will be able to identify how human actions impact the environment, explain how teamwork can solve community problems, describe one way that they can help protect local waterways. Then for materials, you're going to need the copy of the book. We're going to do a chart paper or whiteboard, crayons and papers, and a small bin of paper scraps to simulate cleanup. So again, everything's very simple. You can edit these objectives and swap out the materials how you see fit. If you need classroom copies, just feel free to let me know, or you can just access them whatever way you know how to do that. Okay. All right. For lesson steps, the introduction is going to be about 5 to 7 minutes. So ask students what happens when trash is left on the ground. Where does trash go when it rains or when it's windy? Why is water important for animals and people? Introduce the idea that even small actions can affect the environment. Students can discuss this with a partner. And then for the read aloud, that's going to be 10 to 15 minutes. So you're going to read Dumpy the Big Bay Cleanup. So pause, ask questions. What problem just happened? How are the characters feeling? What might happen next? Encourage predictions and connections, okay? So again, this is just a typical start of a lesson. Again, ask questions. So you can modify these questions. If you got students that maybe they're not, maybe they're at a certain level where they can handle, more of a detailed response, they might be able to put some of this stuff on a sticky note or something like that. They might be able to put that on sticky notes while they're reading the book, or you can get multiple copies and they can read it together. So, there's a lot of different ways to modify this for your class and switch this up how you see fit. You can cut the introduction down, or you can, if hey, I got kids that a certain way, or my kids a certain way, so there's a lot of ways to modify this. Okay. For step 3, discussion, so that's going to be 5 to 10 minutes. So use the discussion questions provided in the book. So guide students to identify the problem, solution, lessons about responsibility and teamwork, and write keywords on the board such as responsibility, teamwork, pollution, and protection. So if you're doing homeschool, then maybe put it on some sticky notes or something like that. And then for the activity, so next part is the activity. So draw and protect. So students can draw a picture of a clean bay, an animal that lives near water, themselves helping protect the environment. Have students share one sentence about their drawing. Okay, so again, that's very easy. You can put up your kid, or your teacher in the classroom, whatever. You can maybe even have them verbally do this. Again, or just really encourage them to draw pictures and practice working on those fine motor skills. So coloring is great. That's always a simple, easy activity to do. That's really definitely for younger kids. So if you're dealing with you got older kids, then you might want to have them write out and say, like, what is the problem in the story? How was this solved? What real world problems can they help protect nature? So encourage complete sentences. So that's really for those older kids, if you have an older kid. So for extensions, again, you could do a classroom cleanup, or you could do like a home cleanup. That could be an activity that your son or daughter can clean up their room or something. You could just talk about that, or even cleaning up the backyard, or cleaning up around the neighborhood. This is really about getting outside and doing things to clean up your own area. So it's an extension, but I definitely would recommend that a lot of people do these things. So again, classroom pledge posters, or you can do a house pledge poster. Maybe at the local library, you guys can, create different posters or something like that. So, sort recyclable, non-recyclable items. So, again, that's an easy activity to do in your local neighborhood. You can research your local waterway. So, I live in Maryland, so the Chesapeake Bay. So, definitely bringing that in there. The Potomac, talking about that. That's something you might want to talk about. Assessment. And again, at the end of every lesson, you at homeschool and teaching, you always want to make sure you assess the child and the student to see where they're coming from. So maybe let's talk about the story lessons. Identify one environmental problem with solutions, and then demonstrate understanding through drawing or short writing. So again, just really talking about the story. what was the moral of the story, maybe even talking about Benny in the story, Benny, he, showed responsibility, but he still needed to make sure that the trash was not getting in the water. So again, that's a great conversation about responsibility and talking about just making sure everybody has a role and they're sticking to their role. If your role is to keep the trash and that's what you, then, sticking to that role. So I think that's important conversations to have with children. These are important conversations to have. So that's the lesson. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section. Again, here's just recap of just who I am. So my name is Raji Clark. You can read that on your own. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next video.